Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel and this amazing video. I'm Aditya. In this video, we will see almost everything about React in 1 hour. So without any further ado, let's begin. Okay, let's start by understanding what is React. So React is a library. Okay, it's a library for creating front end of any web app, and it's a client-side library, so it will always run in the browser. But of course, with frameworks like Next or some other React framework like Gatsby or something like that, you can make it have a full stack application with React where you can have React on the front end and back end in Node. So this video focuses only on the front end of the React, because once you know these concepts, then you can apply it some concepts like similar concepts in Next, or you can also use any React framework once you know these basic concepts. So let's start by installing or creating a new React project. For this, you need to make sure you have latest version of Node install, Node.js. If you don't have it, go to nodejs.org and download the latest version. I already got it, so I'm going to proceed from this step. So I will be using Vite. So Vite is a compiling tool. So we need some compiling tool to compile our React into browser understandable JavaScript. So Vite will do that magic for us, and also it will create a scaffolding of a React project. So we'll begin by copying this command and create our Vite project. So I'm going to copy this from here, then go to my terminal, paste that over here. Now I will be using JavaScript to keep it super simple. So here I'm going to call it React app. Then I'll select React from here. Then I'll go with JavaScript, and that's it. Now we'll cd into React app, the folder that we created, because Vite will create a folder for us and some scaffolding. And let me open this with VS Code. So if you see, we got a basic structure. We have src folder where we will have our React code written. So we have app.jsx. So this is kind of like an entry component. So when it comes to client-side React app, there are three main files: app.jsx, main.jsx, and index.html. So main.jsx is the JavaScript file, so that runs the magic for having the React project. App.jsx is the component, so I'll also cover what's the component thing. And here we have index.html. So as React is a client side, by default it will be a single page application. Single page means we have just one index.html, and our entire app is rendered by the browser in this one div or some HTML element. So here we have this HTML element. We are bringing in src main.jsx, which is this one over here. And what we are telling in that main.jsx is get React from React library, get React DOM from React DOM client, get the app component, so app.jsx. Any React component will have .jsx at the end, so we get app.jsx, and this will be our index.css. So this is the default index in the CSS that we got. Then we say this app.jsx, which means this app component, bring that over here and just put it on this document.getElementById root. That means the HTML element which has inside that index.html, which has ID of root, which is this one over here. Get that element and just put our app over there, or render our app over there. So that's what this line does. And to make this in a more sophisticated way, you would say, we have React.strict mode, so that it kind of makes sure that this app is returned with a React logic. And whenever we have some problem, let's say I break some rule, I will get an error. So something like that. So this app, you could say, is our main app, and all the components needs to be brought in this app directly or indirectly. Now what I'm going to do is we will use Tailwind CSS and create some basic app so that it covers lots of concepts. So we'll go to installation.tailwind and go in the Vite part, and then use the React part. So these steps are already there. We just need to simply follow these steps. So I'm going to install, I've already created the project. I'm also simply going to install Tailwind, and that's it. Follow the steps. So let's do that. So the command is here. Also, one thing to consider here is I forgot to run this step. So all the packages were there, because in package.json, we got some packages. So these packages are the basic packages provided by Vite, and also they will have their own dependencies. So when we run npm install, it's going to install around 200 packages or more. There we go. It already installed when we run Tailwind command. So that's great. Tailwind installation command, like the Tailwind package installation command. Now next thing is we will have this one over here, npx Tailwind init. So let's go inside our project again in the terminal, and let's paste this over here. So we should have these two config files over here. Now here we will add the config files, or we'll tell which files Tailwind should look for. So that's going to be index.html and all the JSX or JS file in src folder. So we'll put those over here, and we will stop for a moment here for Tailwind and just run our React project to see how it looks like. So let's go to our terminal, npm run dev. Now this should start a localhost server because it has its own dev server. So if we go to our browser, just open it, and you will see we have a simple React app. Now this is nothing but this app component over here, this thing over here. We have a logo, we have a counter, and some states. We'll cover all of these. So that's our React app. Now what I'm going to do is I'll bring in the Tailwind part. So that's there, get this in index.css. So index.css, no need of these. We will create all by ourselves, and everything is gone. That's fine. So that's over there, and I think we are good with Tailwind because it's already showing effect. So let's now create some basic app. So what I'm going to do is inside app.jsx, I'll simply remove all of this code, and let's start clean. Okay, let's clear this, let's remove this. That's it. Okay, now you will see it has already started throwing error, expression expected. That's fine. Now let's understand the concept of components. So components are nothing but some section of your web page. For instance, if I go over here, that's fine. It's breaking right now. We'll fix this. Let's go to Tailwind website. So this sidebar is a component, nav bar is a component, these sections. So each section is a component, and this component logic, it's kind of like, you could say, a reusable logic that we could use so that we don't have to write the same code again and again. And also it becomes easier to maintain, and it's also good for scalable applications. Now in React, each component is nothing but a JavaScript function that returns a piece of HTML. So that piece of HTML and this JavaScript function embedded in that like the function returning piece of HTML, this is nothing but a JSX syntax, you could say. Also in that you can put some JavaScript so that it becomes like a reactive HTML, and it also useful if you're writing, let's say, some additional functionalities, like you want the conditional logic and all those things. You can put all that over there. Now here, what I'm going to do is, the rule over here is this function returns a HTML element. Now this will be just one root element which will have n number of children. So one HTML element which can have multiple children. So here, if I have something like this, let's say hello, this is fine. If we go over here, we will see hello. That's perfectly fine. But here, if I do something like this, this is not allowed. You'll see it throws an error. If I save this over here, that's not allowed because it should only return one HTML at a time. If you want multiple HTML, we have something known as a fragment. That's kind of like a virtual element, or you could say like a virtual parent. In that case, we can wrap it inside that fragment or that virtual element, and then we can have multiple HTML like this. Doesn't matter. So that's our this. And also I have noticed that it's bringing everything in center. I don't want that to brought in center. So what we will do is, let's remove this app.css because it also has some default styling. And actually I'm going to just delete it. This app.css, not needed. Also this will go from here, and that should be fine. Perfect. Now what we will do is we'll create a simple to-do list and cover some basic concepts through that. Okay, so let's have a form element here. So this form will have an input which will take in the items or the to-do items that we want to add in our to-do list. So what I will do is here, I will give it some value. Let's say no value actually, but placeholder. This is add item here. And I will apply some styles. I have added these Tailwind styles, like very basic Tailwind CSS. So if we go over here, we have this input. That's great. Now next, we will have a UL which will render our to-do items. So this will be, I'll just keep it again simple. Let's do it like this. Let's follow whatever is being told to us by Copilot for a moment so that we can focus on the logic and not on the HTML and CSS. So this will be class name flex. So we want the column layout and space y of true. That's it. Okay. Now if you notice, I'm adding class name here. I'm not saying class. because that's the JSX syntax. If I use this class, then it will kind of get conflicted with JavaScript class, and it will also kind of get confused, like what's happening, and it may not work. So in that case, we need to make sure that we have class name. So wherever you have certain HTML attributes which might coincide with JavaScript, or certain HTML attributes where you have something like, let's say, Araya label or something like this, then in that case you need to make them in camel case, or for class you have class name. So this is just JSX syntax, and generally when you get an error, it shows what you should do when that error comes up. Now also one thing to consider is input. Ideally we put it like this, but in this case in the React JSX we need to have it as a self-closing tag, because each tag needs to be closed, even though it's input, img, any tag. So any self-closing tags needs to be closed like this. Okay, that's great. Now here we have the to-do list kind of scaffolded. Now what we want is, whenever we add the item, that should go inside this list over here. But the problem here is we don't have any reactivity. For instance, as soon as I add something here, hit a button, or let's say add a button also, why not? Button, add, and here we will give it, let's say, some classes, flex column, sorry, not space x of 3, something like this. So we have a button over here, a bit ugly looking button, that's fine. But once we add that, we want items to render over here. But the problem is that we don't have any reactivity. So to have that reactivity, we have something known as hooks in React. So the first hook over here is useState. Now how does this work is, you first have, like, what do you want? Do you want a state to assign over here? Okay, that's one state. And then you have another state, which is list of to-dos. So this useState function, because each hook is a function it's in itself, it just allows you to get inside the lifecycle of React, because in React there's a lifecycle as well. It uses virtual DOM under the hood. So whenever there is a change in state, the entire component will re-render, like the entire app component will re-render. So what we will do here is we need to be very careful how we choose these states, or where we put these states. So this state takes in the default value. So I'll create one state for list of to-do items. So by default it's going to be an empty array. And this useState function, or every useState function, returns an array itself. It doesn't matter what default value you give, it always returns an array. So the first element in that array is the state itself, and the second element is the state function. So the state function is used to set the value of a state. So that's why the state function is generally begins with set and then whatever the state is. So sets to-dos, let's just set name, set whatnot. So you cannot have something like these, like you cannot do something like this. You cannot change this, otherwise it won't work. You need to use a set function or a state set function to change the value of this state over here. Okay, so this is our to-dos. Now what we will do is we will need this to render in a for list, or sorry, inside with a for loop, or in a list rendering way. So what we will do is we'll remove that li from here, and we will use simple JavaScript, which will use a map, and then it will just map through these array of to-dos and just render that HTML. Now for that, as we have some JavaScript gonna come in, we will use curly brackets. Okay, because we have the HTML, and inside that we need some JavaScript magic, so we'll use a curly bracket. Now here this will be simple JavaScript code. Okay, so here I'm going to say to-dos dot map, then we will use a simple map function which will have to-do and index, and here what we will do is it will simply return the li tag that we just had before, this one over here. Now here each list rendered item needs to have a special prop. We will also cover what is prop, which is known as key. So this helps React to keep track of list rendering elements, and it makes its job super simple. So here the key is a special prop that comes with every list rendered element, or it goes on any list rendered element, and that key should be unique, and the unique will be here the index. So each element, array element, has a unique index. So that goes over here, and here we can have to-do.team or something like that. Let's do that. So I will say here to-do. Now this again gonna be in round bracket, sorry, curly bracket, because we have HTML, and then again we will have some piece of JavaScript. So here I will say to-do dot name. So we'll have a to-do which will be a object. So name and ID, something like that. Okay. So let's put that over here and let's see. Currently we don't have anything. That's great. Now we need another state to add that to-do or something to bind with this so that we can add it over here. So for that we will have const to-do text and set to-do text. By default the value would be blank. Now I want this to-do text to be binded over here so that whenever the change in JavaScript reflects change in this input, and whenever the change in this input, let's say if I type something here, currently it's not being typed, that's fine. Also we need to remove the value from there so it gets binded. No, yeah. So whenever we type here, I want all this text to be binded with this to-do text, and whenever the change in this to-do text happens, that should reflect over here on the input. So this kind of thing is known as data binding, or you could say reactivity. Now here what I need is this value of this input is binded with, so whenever I want to bind or have some JavaScript, curly brackets again, with this to-do text. So go over there, to-do text, and then we have what should we do when the input change. So we have on input. So you will notice, like in JavaScript, if you have some idea of JavaScript DOM, we have input event on input element. So here we say on event name with capital letter of that event name. So if it's change, then on C capital change, on input, on click. So this is the event. So whenever an event happens on this input, which is the input event, so in this other words, when some user enters a value, we want a function to run. So that function will have, of course, the event itself, the arrow function, and we will say here set to do text, and we will say e dot target. So the target will be this input and whatever the value of this input is. Now this function set to do text will take in the input value and bind it to the to do text. Now to make sure this works, let's put that to do text over here, or display that to do text below. So again, we want to display some JavaScript, curly brackets again, JSX. So here you will see whatever I type is assigned to the to do text. Okay, so that's great. Now what we want is whenever this button is clicked, in other words, this form is submitted, we run the set to do's function so that it will just add the to do text inside our to do's. Okay, so here we will have on submit, because submit is event for form. Here I want a JavaScript function written outside, binded over here, because currently we are doing it more like an inline. So what I will do is here I will have a function add to do, which will have that event object, and then here I will prevent the default, set the to do's. So what set to do's will have, it will have the original to do, so we could use a spread operator, original to do's, and the new to do that gets added. So that would be the to do text, and we just simply set the to do text to be blank. Now here I will simply say add to do, okay, the function. So what's going to happen is whenever someone hits submit or this add button, this function will run. Okay, let's give it a try. So here I will say subscribe and add, there we go, it goes over there, like, great. But also if you notice, our code has started to become very cluttered, like our app component has become kind of bigger, and we don't want this. We want things to be well arranged. And also if you remember, as I said, like whenever a to-do's is changed or whenever a to-do text is changed, everything will be re-rendered. So if we have a big component or we have a huge web page, why to re-render the entire app or entire page just because for adding a simple to-do? So for that we will separate these things in separate components. So let's do that. So inside src folder, let's create a new folder, because remember all our React code goes inside this src folder. I will call this components. All the components will come here over here. So when we have this app component, we can create our own components as well. So let's create first component, to-do list, to-do list.jsx. Now to make this simple, I will recommend this React extension, which is ES7 snippets. I think it's this one over here. Yeah, no, not this one. Let me find the right one. this one over here, AS7 plus React Redux React Native snippets. So you can have React component scaffolded very quickly. So let me show how it works. So here we have to-do list. Let's say I want a functional component. So I will say RFC, hit enter, and we have a React component scaffolded. So this to-do list, what it will be, let me remove these two files or close those. So our to-do list will be this list over here. So I'm going to copy this from here and paste it over here like this. Perfect. Next, we need a to-do form. Now you can use one file, one component, or you can create multiple components in same file. So this to-do list, it's kind of like to-do form is related to this. So I'll create the component over here. So to-do form, and then we will have our to-do form here. So I'll copy this to-do form from here and bring this over here. Sorry, I by mistake did something else over here. Great. Now states associated with to-do form. Oh, this should return. Oops. So that will be this one over here, to do text. So we'll take it from here and put it over here. Function associated with to do form, this one over here. Okay. Now what happens is when we hit this button, add button, we are adding to-dos to the to-do list. So it should be over here. So for that, what we could do is we can have the function over here, and we can have the to-do state over here. And also we need to consider that we export this function, otherwise we cannot import it. And this useState from here can come in this one over here. So we can put it like this. Perfect. Now we need to put these pieces together. So let's first format it nicely. That's great. Now here we have the to-do list, we have the function to add to-do, and we have all the to-dos. But however, we don't have that to-do form here. So let's bring that to-do form over here. So I'm going to put that to-do form over here, to-do form. Now rule of thumb, one component should only return one HTML element as a parent. So we'll wrap this inside a fragment like this. Or if we want to add some styling, let's add, actually we could say div and class name. Let's give it max width of maybe 2XL, P of 2, MX auto, something like this. So it looks a bit prettier. So that's, so let's make it LG actually. That's great. Now that's to do form, that's over here. So what we need to do is we need to pass this add to do over here so that this function could run. So we can pass that data with something known as props. So props is a mechanism where you can have data passed from the parent to the child. So it could be a function, it could be object, it could be list, it could be string, it could be anything. So here what I'm going to do is I will say, okay, what's the prop? I will just name it with the function itself. Or let's say, to avoid some confusion, let's name it something different. So here I'm going to say handle addition. Okay, it shouldn't actually just handle list. Let's make it simple. Handle list, handle to do list. So that's the prop, and that prop, as it's going to be a JavaScript or binded prop, so we need to pass this in a curly brackets. So here add to do will come over here like this. Okay, now this add to do is going as a prop as handle list. So this component to do form should take in that prop, and they take in over here. So we have each React component has a parameter known as props. So it takes in a parameter known as props. So it will have props dot handle list, because this props is going to be an object. So it will have something like this, props handle list, and the function like this. Okay, so what we want is we can either use props dot handle list, or we could use a destructure syntax. So it just destructure this props, and we can simply get handle list like this. Okay, Now what we want is this handle list should go over here. Okay, so instead of on submit, we want this handle list function to run. So what it will do is it will, in other words, will run this function. Okay, so this function handle list will run this function. So whenever someone hits add, we are actually running add to do because we are passing it as a prop over here. Okay, now let's bring this to do list over here. To do list, and it will be auto imported if you have exported it. Now if we go over here, we have the to do form. So let's say subscribe, and you'll see it doesn't work because we might have missed something over here. Let's see, what did we miss? So we have add to do, right? So we also need to change this because here we are saying to do text, but there is no to do text. To do text is inside the to do form. So what we need to do here is we need to say function handle submit. So event, we will have here prevent the default behavior, and whatever this handle list is, just run that function handle list and pass this to do text. Okay, pass this to do text. So to do text, whatever to do text being said, pass it over here, and then we will have add to do, which takes in that to do text. We don't need this, and this will go over here like this. Great, perfect. So what we did is we want this add to do to run here. Okay, so it will have handle submit, which will run on submit. Okay, so handle submit is similar to what we had add to do before. So it will prevent the default, then run the handle list function, which is nothing but this function passed as a prop add to do, and set the to do text to blank again. So let's try this out. There we go. Awesome. So that works. Now let's go to next step. Now let's say we have some to-dos coming from the external API. For in this case, I'll be using this JSON placeholder. Now this is a very typical scenario of data fetching where you might have an e-commerce website where you need to fetch some data and just show it over here. Or you might have some other website, you need some data to get in on page load or some on button click, something like that. So how can we have this to-dos or mimic that logic by fetching this to-dos? So what we will do is we will use this JSON placeholder APIs. So this is the URL for getting all to-dos. So let's go over here and write a function to get all to-dos. So here I will have function get all to-dos. Okay, this function will simply run this API over here. So let's copy this, paste it over here, and what we will get is this JSON is actually our data. So what we need to do is we need to do set to dos with whatever JSON we get. Actually it shouldn't be a JSON, we should get an array. So that's going to be our data actually. So we set the to dos with whatever data we get, and here instead of to do.name you will see it gets a user ID title, whatnot. So here instead of name we should target title, and also here when we set the to do or add a new to do we need to add it as a title. Great, so that's great. Now here we have this function. Now how can we also needs to be over here, sorry. So how can we make this function or call this API on page load? Because if we put it over like this, let's say get all to dos, this is a big blunder because you will get all the to dos, it will set the state, re-render this page or this component, get all the to dos, and so on, and it will go in an infinite loop and simply get the browser down. So we don't want that to happen. We just want this to happen once. So for that we have useEffect, another hook. Okay, useEffect, this one. So what does this do is useEffect generally runs on change in some dependency or whenever there is change in something. For instance, it will be something like this, useEffect. Okay, so this function is again a hook which takes in the function itself. Okay, so you can have an arrow function. So this arrow function will run whenever there is a change in any dependencies. So we'll have get all to dos. Now if we keep it like this, it's still of no use because this will keep on running in infinite loop because we didn't pass any dependencies. So the second parameter Our second argument to this useEffect function, or hook you could say, is the dependency array. Okay, so if we keep it blank, this says useEffect to run only once. Okay, and that will be whenever the component or mounted. If we want it to run on every change in to-dos, so it will run every time when to-dos change. If we keep it like this, this will only happen once. Okay, in dev mode it might happen twice. Just I think it should be, I'm not sure if the bug is still there, but it might happen twice. But in production it generally happens just once. So if we go back over here in our app, this one over here, you'll see we have all the to-dos that are fetched. That's great. Now if we add a new to-do, say new to-do, add it, you'll see that new to-do will be in the end of the list. What if we wanted the top of the list? We can simply use in the front, we just change the position. And now if we try again, add new, should come at the top. There we go, add new, perfect. So that's great. Now this is how you could do data fetching with useEffect. You can also have useEffect run whenever, as I said, change in state, and it's very useful when you want to run a function or run or hydrate a component or do something with the function or component whenever there is change in something. Now in real world, we will have multiple pages for an app. Even if it's a client-side app, let's say in dashboard, we might have multiple pages. So for that, we could use React Router. So this is a library again, which helps us to have navigation in a client-side React app. Now what we will do is, to mimic this feature, we will have a page that renders a to-do when we click that to-do. Whenever we pass a to-do item or the ID of that to-do, we should get a new page. So let's see how this could be done. So we begin with by installing the package npmi react router DOM. There we go. We start back the server again. Now what we need to do is we need to write the router logic over here. So currently we just have one component. So what we need to do is get certain things. So first we will have import browser from React Router DOM, so it can give me auto suggest browser router. So we will need a browser router element because this will be browser side routing. So we'll have browser router. Then we will need route component that comes with React Router DOM. We'll need a routes component that will come with, again, React Router DOM. So if you go to browser router, so here we will have routes, and there we pass the paths. Okay, so first here we will have routes, browser router. Inside this browser router we will have routes. Now here we will have the first route path, which will render our to-do list, and then we will have another path. Let's say it shows to-dos and then ID like this, which will render the element which will be our to-do item. So let's have here to-do item for now, to-do item.jsx. Let's have the scaffolding, just a simple component, and let's just have, so this is our dynamic variable. So let's say we have to-dos /1, it should give us to-do, first to-do item, to-dos /2, second to-do item. So element over here, and that would be to-do item. There we go, this one. Okay, so what we are telling is, okay, whenever we are on a route path, render this component to-do list. Whenever we are on this path in our browser, render this component. Okay, that's great. And that's it. We have our router ready. So if we go over here now, let's see /to-dos 1, 11, whatever, we see to-do item. That's great. Now, what if we have something like this? We want to show, currently it shows blank page, but we want to show 404. So how can we show 404? So for that, we can create a simple 404 page here, function, or we can have it here. That's fine. Function 404. And oh, it should be 404 like this. Error 404 like this. And here it just returns simply a div class name grid place items center h of maybe 96, width full, and here we have 404 like this. And then we will simply say here whenever, and this needs to be very much at the end, otherwise it will still show 404. So wherever none of these browse or these paths match, so for all the paths which are not mentioned at the top, enter 404. So we go back over here and there we see 404. That's great. That means not found. Like we can add over here like this, page not found. Perfect. That's great. Now what if we go to 1? There we want to-do item with 1. So let's go to this page over here, or this component over here. We will have a logic to get the to-do item. So how can we get the item itself? So how can we get the parameters? Like, because these are passed in the routes, these things over here, how can we get this ID? Well, very simple. We could use the use params hook that comes with React Router. So let's go over here. We have import use params that comes with React Router DOM. And what we will do is here, we will get the ID. Now this needs to match with the path over here, or the whatever value we have given after colon. So if you have given here to-do underscore ID, colon to-do underscore ID, that should be just to-do underscore ID here. Currently we have ID, so we'll just keep it ID. Now then we will have a use effect that runs whenever this ID is available. So this ID over here. So if this ID is not there, we return. That means we don't run anything. So this function will just stop. And whenever the ID has a value, we run the function to get the to-dos from the JSON placeholder API. So this will be the API, we'll get a response, and we will get some data. Now we can store this data in a state. So here we will have const to-do, set to-do, we will have a use state, and simply we could say set to-do data like this. And then here we will say if we have to-do. So to-do, if it is there, render this. Otherwise, just don't do anything, like just say loading. That would be great. Okay. We can also do like pending and all those things. Currently they are not needed. Actually, we could use pending, like a pending state. So what we could do is we could have something like this, const loading state, set loading state. So here the loading state will begin. So loading will be, set loading state will be true. This will be false. And here we can have set loading state to be true. So false, back again. Now what we will do is we will have here if it is loading. So we can use the ternary operator. If it is loading, then we could say loading like this. Okay. So that goes over here. Otherwise, we will have a logic to display other things. So it could be, what we could do is we could have something like this. So if loading, then loading, otherwise show the component itself. So div, that's our component. Actually, these are not needed because we haven't went into HTML yet. We are still in the JavaScript. We haven't went here. We will need the curly brackets. So here we will have to-do.title, simply whatever to-do that's coming. So now let's go back and see what happens. So if we go over here to our app, refresh this, nothing happens. So we have to-do.title. So loading and set to-do comes with data. Okay, let's see what's wrong over here. Let's see if we got any errors. Yes, we did. It says useState is not defined. Oh, sorry. Totally sorry. This needs to have useState like this. And there we go. We have the first to-do. Let's go with the second one. And loading was there for a fraction of a second because it's super fast. So it is loading and then it comes up, and that's great. If the to-do is not there, then we could show 404. Same logic we could see here. Okay, we check if to-do is there. If it's there, we show to-do title. If not, we show 404. So that's the thing. Now what we need to do is we need from this to-do list, whenever we go to, let's say, to-dos, so this page over here, whenever we click on this, it should take us over there. So for that, I'm gonna get the link component from React Router DOM. Okay, now instead of this li tag, Actually, we'll keep that li tag, but this thing will be entirely wrapped in a link component. So that would be link like this. Okay. So this will be over here. So this will handle our client-side navigation. Okay. Now here it will say, okay, where to go? So go to, could use backtick, to-dos, and then whatever is the ID. So ID will be todo.id. todo.id like this. So if we click on this, to-dos one, this one, that's great. Perfect. So we have our simple navigation. That's amazing. Now, last thing I want to cover is code splitting, because currently as we have React client-side app or client-side rendered app, when we build the final of bundle, so if I go over here and if I say from package.json, it will give me the build command. So I would say npm run build. You will see it creates a one big bundle, which is this one over here, which is 163, which is fine. But if we have a bigger app, this is going to be a huge, and we don't want browser to load all of this, especially the other pages. In this case, these are not even loaded yet. So for that, we could use code splitting. Now to do code splitting, first we import lazy from React. And also we will need suspense component. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to wrap these things into suspense component. So here I'm going to say suspense. Okay. Now what to do when the lazily loaded component is not available? So we have a fallback component for that, or a fallback HTML element, which is loading. And here we close the suspense tag. Okay. Now what we will do is here I could say loading. You could have some animation, whatever component you like, loading page, something like this, just a simple text. And here I will lazy load this to do item. So here I'm going to say const to do item lazy loaded, comment it from here and just pass it here as it is without any problem. First, let's see if this works. So if we run the npm run dev server, so if we go over here, we have the app, run this, that's great. Refresh this, that's great. All works fine. Perfect. Now let's see the final bundle size. So if we could stop this, previously it was 163.85 KB. If we do npm run build, you'll see it created two bundles. So the bundle size, like it's 0.33 KB, it has reduced a bit, but imagine if this was a big component. So we can also split this one over here. So we could say to-do list also const to-do list equal to lazy load that component as well. So let's put this over here. And now if we see the final size, 163 KB, that's fine. So if we now do npm run start to see the production build, sorry, it's not start. I think it's different. It is preview, sorry. So we could do npm run preview. And here we could see our app in the production build. So if we go over here, there we go. This is our app. Everything works great. All right. Perfect. So that's all in this video. And I must say we have just scratched the surface. Like there are a lot of things to learn in React. We have advanced concepts like use callback, use memo, context providers API. And also we have state management. So there are a lot many advanced concepts, but these basic concepts are good enough for you to start with React learning journey. And also you can create like a very basic sophisticated app with this basic concepts. This is kind of like a base. So once you have a strong base, you can build on top of this. So that's all in this video. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you feel this video is worth sharing with your network, please do share with your network. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe to our channel. So see you in the next video. Till the next time, goodbye.